did like that, Melissa, because to be honest, I hadn't even thought about that. That you're right. I mean, you know, you here in our community, who is the best example of somebody's whose childhood was robbed and they made it very apparent in everything they did once they became an adult? Michael Jackson.
Didn't think about that.
He was robbed of his childhood. If we want to be,
That's
if we
that's
want to
so
keep it
true.
one buck,
Yeah.
when you become the breadwinner
Yeah. That's a
for
good point.
umpteen people,
Mm-hmm.
you carrying that.
Because he was their meal ticket. He was their meal ticket.
You don't think nobody gonna come for us for saying that? But
I hope
here,
not.
our Lord Jesus. But here's the thing. I mean, listen, it's out there. I'll go. He's talked about that he didn't have his childhood, and
Mm-hmm.
he was making up for it. He had the resources to make up for what he lost, and he
Mm-hmm.
was doing it. That's a good
Mm-hmm.
example of that. You know what? That was how he was manifesting his anger.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna get everything that I missed.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
care that I'm, a senior citizen up in this piece on this
Right.
merry-go-round with a chimpanzee. I
Right.
don't care.
Well,
Um,
he did not like adulthood.
that's right.
And it
That's
was
good.
very evident. And
Mhm.
if you don't like adulthood, you probably don't like adults, right? That kind of goes with the territory. So I'm just gonna go hang out with children. You know what I'm saying? Anger looks different for different people. It
That's
doesn't look
good.
the same. Everybody's not going to be punching walls and kicking in doors. Some
Mhm.
people are just going to associate themselves in different settings and different environments and then be against other settings and other environments. So anger looks different for different people. But I
That's
agree
good.
with you, and I'm glad you brought that up. And if people want to come for me, I hope I can at least get some royalties or something as a result of it. But I grew up watching Michael Jackson. I'm a huge Michael Jackson
Me too.
fan.
Me too.
And
Mhm.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think we went into, oh, he's some type of pervert and he's some type of child molester and he's da 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 da, which none of us know unless we were in the room.
That's right.
That's between him and God and those children. What I will say is we can see things and we interpret them incorrectly.
That's good.
And I just feel like a lot of Black women get interpreted incorrectly
That's good.
because people are so bent on seeing the anger and not really seeing what is driving the anger. Like you said, the root of the problem. People don't just wake up and just be angry. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
There's underlying things. And so if we're going to talk about this, let's talk about the underlying things, not just what we're seeing, not
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
what Tyler Perry is showing in his movies. Let's get to what is at the root of that anger.
That's good. That's really, I mean, I'm so glad. And to be honest, even as I'm talking, I'm like, as I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about myself when I was raising my kids. Like, I'm thinking like, well, no, I didn't make them cook for me. Like, I'm really, and I'm thinking like, well, man, that's probably why. Like, even though I was trying to go to school and working and doing this,
Mm-hmm.
and I was trying to find other ways to, I mean, ultimately, yes, I'd imagine that my son is probably mad at me because he was watching his sister. But I did try to put things in place for them, like they didn't have to cook. Like, no, you're not cooking for me and whoever I'm booed up with or whatever. No, that's not what you're doing. If you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
cook, I would cook them something that would last. But once they became teenagers, I've learned that they used to barter with each other. So Christian would cook for them and he would do the cleaning.
They were being mature.
Listen. But I just think that we need to really, as a community, really start, and taking our power back. And I really like that you brought out that ultimately, yes, we have a reason to be angry. But here's the thing. It's easy to just talk about the anger and not have to deal with why there's anger.
Mm-hmm.
Because if
Mm-hmm.
I'm so hyper focused on your anger, one, I don't have to deal with that. I might have made you angry.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yes.
only gonna focus on your reaction,
Mm-hmm.
not the action that caused the reaction.
Right. And
You
this is
know.
how
Mhm,
our community has turned against each other.
mhm.
it all of that stuff has been perpetuated over the years, and
Mm-hmm.
it has caused, like, I want to go back to what you said earlier. You said that internalizing, right? You
Mm-hmm.
internalize these messages that
Mm-hmm.
you have been given, and then you show up in the world based off of what you've internalized. I am internalizing that I'm angry. I'm internalizing that I'm this and I'm that. And when we
Mm-hmm.
begin to do that, we forget that there was a cause and effect.
And that's
And
right.
I'm just simply saying, let's get back to the cause so we can understand the effect a little bit better, and
Mm-hmm.
begin to recognize that you have a lot of Black girls walking around having internalized that they're
Mm-hmm.
not feminine,
Yeah, that's
that they're not polite,
they're not
they're not
beautiful.
respectful, they're not beautiful, that they're animals,
Mm-hmm.
okay?
Mm-hmm.
And when people internalize those type of negative messages, it shows up in how they behave.
Mm-hmm.
So now you have told me I'm an animal, I may just show up acting like an animal because I believe that about myself. I'm
Mm-hmm.
believing this narrative about myself that is essentially causing me to behave in a certain kind of way. And we have to help our Black girls understand that you've internalized this, but these are lies. These are things that
Lies.
other people were saying about you for whatever their reason was, to
Mm-hmm.
put you down, whatever their reason was. But how
Mm-hmm.
often do we internalize things? I
You're
can
right.
think of a million things in my life that I've internalized.
Mm-hmm.
Before we got on here, I was talking about my baby lips. And what did you say to me? You said, well, who told you you
Because you
had
got
baby
baby
lips?
lips.
That's what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about that, something that small
Yep.
that I've been carrying with me,
Yep.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about messages of hate, messages of anger, messages of violence, okay? That
Mm-hmm.
these little girls, these little Black innocent girls and
Mm-hmm.
boys are
Mm-hmm.
walking around with, that you're
Mm-hmm.
violent, you're aggressive, you need to be tamed.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be disciplined harshly because you don't know how to manage yourself.
Mm.
I mean, I can go on and on, but that
No.
internalization that you brought up is powerful. And instead
Yes.
of us turning against each other and going off of what we're seeing in terms of behavior, we need to go target that message. What is that message that this little girl has that's causing her to behave this way? What's the
That's good.
message that this little boy has received that's causing him to behave that way?
That's good. That's
There's
good.
power in messaging. How
Well,
many
the word of God
McDonald's,
says,
listen, how many McDonald's commercials have you watched and you had to go out and get a Big Mac? The messaging is powerful. And that Big Mac don't look nothing like it does on that commercial.
nothing.
It's like thrown in the thing, it's flopped over and everything. But that messaging, the
Mm-hmm.
messaging is
And
powerful.
you know, the word of God says, death and life is in the power of the tongue. And the reality is that we've had death spoken into our life
Mm,
so much.
yeah.
Especially we have to recognize that oftentimes when you are a people dealing with oppression, your desire is always to get the approval of the oppressor in the hopes they'll stop oppressing you. And the
Mm,
reality is that we've had all these experiences that we have, in like you said, internalized. And and I think about the thing that just stuck with me when I was looking at this information, is that the idea of innocence.
ooh,
Innocence. You They don't even view us as innocent after
mhm,
5
mhm,
years old.
mhm. Wow.
That's So if an adult and I see a little 5-year old and I don't view you as innocent, then how am I going to treat you?
Mhm.
Think
That's
about that.
powerful.
So think
That's
about that in
powerful.
school. I don't think that you're innocent. Becky is innocent. Did you take Becky's milk?
Mhm.
I don't think you're innocent. No, I didn't take Becky's milk. Becky took my milk, and so I took hers back. I don't think you're innocent, remember?
Mhm.
So then if I don't think you're innocent and you're telling me your story, then what do I think? I think you're a liar.
Yeah.
I think you're a deviant.
Mm-hmm.
That just and think about it. I can think of different instances and situations and experiences, and we got to start being accountable for that.
Yeah.
That we are contributing to a messaging that has been with us for hundreds of years. And people can miss me with, I wasn't back there in slavery. Those messages still exist.
Mm-hmm.
It is no secret that
Mm-hmm.
how we have to show up. We cannot show up as our authentic self. We have to make sure everyone feels comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just come and say what we want to. Literally, me and a coworker can literally come in and say the exact same thing,
Mm.
exact same words.
Wow.
They can actually say it with some spice. I can say mine's. I can tone mine down
Yes,
because
indeed.
I'm being mindful of my audience. I'm still gonna be judged as an angry black woman. When I tell you after that situation with that young lady, and I talked to her and I was like, listen, what you're not gonna do is internalize this. This is her issue.
Mm. Good.
When I tell you that was the most freeing moment for me, and it wasn't supposed to be about me, but I
Mm-hmm.
told her, I know that my personality is way different than yours.
Mm-hmm.
Don't internalize this. That's her
Mm-hmm.
issue that she wants to project on you.
Yep.
And from that moment on, I realized that's how it is. I'm no longer, no one's gonna come around and tell me I'm an angry black woman anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I've had brothers in the church.
Let's not even talk about the men.
Tell me how I need to adjust myself, how I
Yeah. Yeah.
Black girl adultification.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I know we about to get ready to wrap up. I know you got a good one go do, but one of the things we definitely want to leave with, we definitely want to talk about the fact that we talked about the reason why a lot of these things are still prevalent, and even that we in our community have taken, because what we see in the media, how
Mm-hmm.
we see how we see black women portrayed. And the unfortunate thing is that even in, like we say, like, well, we want to see something that we can relate to. We need to ask ourselves, what are we relating to? Are we relating to a narrative that's been put out there, have been perpetuated?
Mm-hmm.
And so even some of the movies that even some of our African
African
American
Americans. Mm-hmm.
producers are making, some of them play into those stereotypes, those
Yeah.
archetypes.
Yep. They misrepresent us.
So the media plays a really, and think about it. Let's think about even the news. When something goes wrong, it feels like they go, if I'm standing there and I got my suit jacket on, my little purse and stuff, and then another black young lady sitting there, and let's just say that, she's dressed in a way that would be perceived as ghetto,
Mm.
or would be perceived as like not professional. That's what we're gonna say. We're not gonna scratch that. We're not gonna say she doesn't perceive to be professional. They're gonna walk past me and go to her
Mm-hmm.
because they want that narrative to be portrayed.
Yes.
They're gonna walk right by me
Mm-hmm.
because they're gonna look at me from the outer. It's like, no, you might be able to have a conversation. You
Right.
might be a little bit, because then they talk about, oh, you talk so good. Oh
You're
my
so
God.
articulate.
Oh my God. Oh my God. But I say that to say that these narratives that are in the media, if we think about movies, we think about how the news portrays us all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we bought into a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Black girl adultification is real. And
Mm-hmm.
and it has, of course, is so we said it started with commodification of the bodies. We was a commodity. We was treated as a commodity.
Mm-hmm.
And then the things that we experience, in them setting up that system, because ultimately the system worked really well, because the white woman wanted to to be perceived as pure, docile, whatever, and the black women that they were raping was supposed to be the awful, loose morals, so you're raping me, I'm the amoral one.
Mm-hmm.
Make that make sense.
Wow.
So anyway, Melissa, this is a heavy topic.
It's very
it,
heavy. It's very heavy.
it's heavy, it's uncomfortable, but you
Mm-hmm.
know what? It's time for us to start having the uncomfortable conversations so
I'm
we
all
can get
about
better.
I'm all about being radical. And so it is. It really is a heavy topic. And what I would say is what came to mind as you were talking is powerlessness.
Mm.
Slavery was about abuse, and there was clearly a power differential. Now, we've been on here several episodes talking about power differentials, talking about abuse, talking about trauma, and all of that.
Mhm.
And where we are now is generational historical trauma,
Mhm.
trauma that has been passed down,
Mhm.
where we have now taken on the attributes of the people who abused us.
Mm.
I hate to say it, but it's the truth. Many of us are treating ourselves the same way that we were treated.
Wow.
And that's what trauma does, right? When you think about generational trauma, when you think about you being raised by parents who were dealing with trauma, they traumatized you. And then if you don't get the healing that you need, then you traumatize your children. That's what we call generational or historical trauma. And so we have been passed down with this historical trauma that has caused us to take on this powerlessness, this self denigrating, this internalizing of all of these messages that we were given, that we were nothing. We were no better than a washing machine. Because when I hear you say a commodity, that's what I'm thinking about. Something that you go to the store and buy.
That's what we were.
We were nothing more than that. And many of us show up with that same stuff.
Mm.
And we get caught up in the external. Well, I'm gonna make sure I got an expensive bag and I got some expensive shoes. That's a whole nother topic. But many of us have gotten caught up in externally validating ourselves through what we own, what we drive, and all of this type of stuff because we're not doing the internal work.
Mhm.
The internal work of valuing ourselves as Black men and Black women, and
Yeah.
divulging ourselves of those messages
Mhm.
that we were not feminine and all of that stuff that you talked about. We're
Mhm.
still kind of seeing ourselves as commodities.
Wow. And seeking
But
and
but
seeking.
we think that because we can possess something, because I can own something and go buy something, that still ain't at play. But it is.
I was going to say, and what we're trying to do, like when you talk about trying to get the external validation, what we're doing is really trying to get privilege adjacency.
Correct. Correct. Even if that means that we devalue our own people.
Yeah. And we're
And
going
we
to talk about
devalue
that.
and devalue
We're going to talk about
ourselves,
that.
like you said, trying to get that acceptance
Mm-hmm.
from these people who owned us.
Mm-hmm.
So that's all I got to say about that. I'm gonna leave it at that,
Ooh,
because
Lord
because
Jesus.
we could go in a whole lot of directions with this topic.
We
We
listen,
thought we thought church hurt was uncomfortable.
woo. Lord have mercy. What's your good one go do? Because
Well, I just want to share. I have been reading this book. It's called Post Traumatic Slave Syndrome, and it's written
mm,
by Joy DeGruy. She has a PhD. And it talks about the America's legacy of enduring injury and the need for healing within the African American community. And
wow.
where I'm at now, she talks about these values that are held within the African American community. She had went on a trip to Africa and was able to kind of observe how
Mm,
African people interact with each other while she was there. And one of the things that she talks about is that within the African American community, there is this preeminence of relationships. And that for us, relationships is what drive everything for the Black community, for the African American
Mm,
community. And she talked about when she was working in the school setting, and she would have students that would be struggling, African American students that would be struggling, and she would try to get to the bottom of it, like, why are they struggling? And so she would start asking them. Now, a lot of the white teachers would just say, well, they're not smart enough, they're not disciplined enough, all of those types of things, right? And she was just like, no, I don't really think it's that. I'm gonna look deeper into this. And what she found when she would talk to the students is that for them, they felt like the teacher didn't like them. And if they felt like the teacher didn't like them, it affected how they performed and how
mm,
engaged they were in their educational experience. And so what I got from that is we are so driven by relationship.
mhm,
And when you think about the atrocities of slavery and everything and all of that stuff that's gotten passed down, we are here struggling in some ways to really connect with each other and have relationship, even though that is at the very core of who we are as a
mhm,
people. And so
mm.
I just thought that was so powerful that we've got
That
to get
is
back to
powerful.
valuing each other and
So the
valuing our connections and valuing our relationships.
mhm. I mean,
Not
that's
just
God created us for
exactly,
connection.
exactly. We're a communal people.
Mhm.
And it's the breakdown in that communal aspect of who we are that has become the damaging factor.
Yeah, because our families were split up, remember? And
Exactly. And then
because you
and then you had people that were in the house and people that weren't in the house.
mhm,
See, they knew
mhm.
what they were doing. They were strategic.
Yes, yes. I
They
mean,
were
because think about
strategic.
it. Where there's the word of God says, where there's unity, there is strength. And the
Correct.
dismantling of of the family unit, it definitely
Correct.
was a bit definitely broke us. And
Yes.
then, and I'm gonna say this, and then we got to get ready to get off. Is that somebody had talked to me about that they had saw this. They was quoting a statistic. Well, 70% of I don't know where they got this number, but 70% of African American families don't have a father in the household. And so I told the person, I said, let's okay, so here I'm not going to say that's false, but it's a couple things that they're not also adding. They're not
Mm-hmm.
also adding slavery. I don't
Mm-hmm.
care how we want to pretend like that it left an indelible mark. That's number one. I
Correct.
said, but number two, after the I always said it was the deal that Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed after the Great Depression, in which they started welfare. Welfare was not created for us, but they started welfare. Well, what happened is that once African Americans began to try to get access to those services, they began to change the rule. And one of the rules that they changed is that if you had a man in a house, you couldn't access the benefits.
Mm.
So what do you think people were doing so that they can
Mm-hmm.
access the benefits that they needed?
Mm-hmm.
They started to say a man wasn't in the house.
Right.
So there's always these things that has contributed to a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
But we have not taken the time to really dig in and figure out what's the root of everything.
Yes.
We try to fix stuff, fix the tree by the leaves. Get to the root.
Yes. Yes.
So that's
That's
enough. That's
so
all I'm gonna
powerful.
say. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well,
This has been good.
we are so grateful that you all joined us today. This has been an incredible topic. I felt so unprepared coming into it, but as the conversation opened up, Regina, you did such a great job of just really bringing us back to the historical context,
Thank you.
and the roots of where we are today. And it really just opened me up to a deeper and better understanding of this whole thing. And so I'm just so grateful for this conversation.
Mhm.
We're excited you guys joined us. Please tune in for our next episode as we continue to talk about Black Girl Adultification. We're hoping to bring in some guests and some other great
Yes.
minds to
Mhm.
share in this conversation. And we're just asking that you would be open to this conversation. Everything we share here is not for the intent of criticizing, putting down, or being judgmental. Everything that we're sharing here is coming from a place of truth and heart and compassion and a desire to just all really be educated and be
Mhm.
more informed. And I think that's what God would want. He said, study to show yourself approved. So you don't need to be ashamed. And that's just not the Bible. I believe He wants us to study a lot of things and be open to being informed and being knowledgeable people. And aware of the things that are going on in this world that can create so many issues for us if we don't know what their goal is. So again, thank you guys for joining us for this conversation. You can find us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. Please tune in and watch. I tell you, I go back and watch it. I think I probably watched a couple of episodes 5 or 6 times, and I always forget that I'm looking at myself. It's so good. But again, you can find us on all those platforms. We'd love to have you guys follow us. Again, we are Righteous Minds, where we are tending the mind and nurturing the soul. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.
Bye.